I have already started. It's 19 minutes and 55 seconds. So, good afternoon. The good news, we are not in a French lunch, because in a French lunch, you would have drunk some wine, and if I had some wine, I would have half of the class, the room. So the good news is there is no wine, no alcohol. That's good news. You know. So, yeah, I am emeritus prof. That means, in fact, that I am retired. I don't look retiree, but I am retired. I am more than 65. So people ask me how I'm doing. You know, I'm young, and I've been working with young people for all my life. You know, so I've been also at ESSEC Graduate School of Business, and I have been at HEC more than 28 years. You know, I'm a specialist of HR. I am very well known in Francophone world on HR issue. I was the first one to write in 1988. Some of you were not born, on a strategic HR book. That was the first strategic HR, because my conviction, HR, unfortunately, is not yet in a strategic position in many companies, to be honest. And when I say a strategic position, that means HR being to say no to business leaders and not yes. I see so many HR people saying. I am also working with the French Foundation. That's a pro bono activity. You know, I give back to the society just because they helped me when I did my 2 doctorates. And the last thing, I am also president of a Francophone Association of HR Academics. In fact, I created this association with friends in '89, and they called me 25 years later to say, you should be a president before you die. So that's why we have 1,000 people in this association. We have people from Quebec, from Africa, more and more people from Black Africa. You know that Black Africa is speaking French a lot. We have people from North Africa. We have people from Lebanon. We have more than 1,000 academics. So that's interesting. So it's a strong association. You know, when we talk about responsible leadership, when Merit asked me to think of a topic, I knew there were a lot of people talking about leadership. This morning, I was impressed by all the people talking about leadership. And you said something just before lunch that was important. You say, in fact, we talk about the person. You know, talking about what the leaders do, that's nice. But talking about the person, you know, how we question ourselves when we are leaders, that was the idea. So, you know, I put some examples. I could have done like this morning, somebody asked you, what is a leader? I could have had exactly the same question, but we can say that broadening the vision. You know, obviously, a responsible leader has a much wider vision than just making money, basically, doing business, taking into account the stakeholders. You know, the stakeholders theory became very important in the past 20 years. So obviously, leaders have to take into account stakeholders, and among the most important stakeholders, you have the NGOs, empowering individuals and teams. I do think, and I will show you that there is an Indian leader. I'm very close friend of him. His name is Vinit Nayar. You know, the author of Employees First, Customers Second. I've been doing a lot of work with him, and you know, this guy is a really empowering individual. Listening internally and externally, being humble. We talk about humility. One of the sessions was about humility and power. I don't think there is a contradiction, by the way. If I was on the panel, I do think people have both power and humility, you know. And I would say it all depends on this, and so on. So a leadership style that requires, obviously, a deep cultural change in traditional organization, you know, the command and control trade, and even business school curriculum, including my own. HEC, and I have somebody from HEC in the room, has been known to be very arrogant school. Very, you know, because we are, honestly, we are the number one in the Francophone world. So that, you know, when you are the number one, you become very quickly arrogant. The problem is you have to become humble, and that's an issue. And also, you know that this kind of leadership is a strong attractor for young generation. And even for the people like me, I am a typical baby boomer, you know, born in 1953. So I can tell you, I know what is the baby boom. A number of you are the X, Y, and not X. I don't see a Z generation, because the Z are the people born after 95. I don't know if I have people born. So, you know, we talk about this morning the context. One of the most important contexts is culture. For me, you know, when we talk about leadership, we have to take into account the culture. I just took a very famous model, the Queen and Cameron, and I like this one because you see 4 types of culture. I'm pretty sure you know this model. Bureaucracy is the first one, the most traditional one. Then, during the 80s, the 70s, 80s, we moved to the clan. The clan is the Japanese model. And then you move to, during the 90s, to the market. Market is very performance-oriented culture. And then the most recent culture is obviously the one towards what it's called adhocracy. You know, adhocracy was invented by Mintzberg, a Canadian, famous strategy author, And I do think that when we talk about leadership, it all depends where you are. Where is the center of your culture? And we are actually, my conviction is when we talk about responsible leadership, we are talking more of leaders who are towards the top, they are obviously still focusing on performance. I'm not saying that they are not interested by performance, but they are really towards, loyalty and innovation more than the bottom part. And again, it all depends where you come from. It all depends where you want to go. That's the main issue. And by the way, the HR systems in each box are very different. That's what makes, obviously, the story a long journey. And this one is the one often I show. That's the short history of HR. You will recognize a lot of things. The people management were seen as administration, psychological, legal, but the point I want to make is, the most important change and the digital revolution has an impact. I do a lot of work on the impact of digital on people and organization and the HR function. And what I see is the more we move towards, the years 2010 and so on, we talk about the more strategic, I say it's still a long journey. Then we talk about HR being able to bring added value, real added value, and not a cost function, And here we have the innovation. Marketing means we have the necessity to take into account the diversity. This morning there was the comment of your colleague about why she had the ladies, woman on the T-shirt. I do think we have obviously a lot of issues regarding diversity and more, and that's where I come, the concept of incubator. I do think that responsible leaders, and the more you go to the top, the more you are moving to a responsible leadership, which is giving power to the people to innovate, you see. And obviously, on the left, you have main focus of management. My conviction, and it's more and more the case, especially because we are facing huge issue with the digital revolution, we are focusing more and more on soft skills. And that's why we have a lot of people in this conference talking about soft skills. Now, some key questions we can ask about responsibility. Why do we work? The why question is very important. And the young people are very sensitive to the why. And that's why, by the way, it was called the why generation. What is the purpose of the company? The notion of purpose. We have seen this notion already discussed this morning. In France, we have a new trend where we call entreprise à mission. And the word mission in French means purpose. We have a whole thinking about how we can enlarge the goal of a company, not only satisfying the business objective and the shareholders' expectation. So, and we may have a lot of change in the governments. How we can find meaning in our work. The word meaning is critical. You don't keep people if you don't, especially the young generation, if you don't provide meaning, and so on. What are the principles and practice that guide action of today's leaders? This morning I wanted to say one word when they ask a question: exemplarity, walk the talk. I talk to so many companies where they have, as you say, somebody said, the values on the wall, and you see the leadership team that don't practice the values. So the problem is how you make the principle and practice, that are real. And in HR, we have to be aligned also, and so on. So I'm going to go. And the last question is important. Can responsible leadership result in superior business and financial performance? My conviction is yes, more and more and more, hopefully. Okay, here I have just 3 pillars, and because I belong to a business school, I have still a strong research. I do think research, the more we will do research on responsible leadership, responsible organization, that will impact, obviously, the business leaders' decision. We have education, and that's true that the more we are working on education of leaders, of future leaders, on responsible leadership, the more we are going to have a mindset change. And action, it doesn't mean that we just stay on research and education. We have to do action and to be, and I know there are a number of consultants in the room, and everybody who can act, it's very important. So again, we have to develop showcase example. And I gave you the example of this guy. The first time I heard of this guy, it was in 2010. I finished an executive program, 4 days, in center of India, a town called Hyderabad, in a beautiful business school, ISB, Indian School of Business. 4 days with a highly bureaucratic company called NHPC, National Hydropower Company, very bureaucratic. 4 days of strategic HR, with about 35 leaders. The last day in the bookstore, there was one book just arrived. The title of the book, Employees First, Customers Second. I say, who is the crazy guy who has written this book? I bought the book right on the spot. I was flying back to Paris. I read the book in the plane back to Paris. I say, this guy is just wonderful. I mean, he has understood everything. So I met him the following year. He was he was coming to Paris because the French version of the book has been the second highest. We are the second highest sales for this book in the world. A lot of French have bought the book, the French version of the book. And I was invited to his first dinner, VIP dinner. I mean, I organized it, in fact. And he said to me at the end, I'd like to do a conference with HEC. 3 months later, I did a conference, 450 people in the room, fully booked, 10 minutes of standing ovation, a long ovation. The guy was incredible. So he has done this transformation of this company, HCL Technology. If you know the book, you know perfectly the steps, trust and transparency, inversion of the pyramid and so on, the CEO in the servant leadership. But very interesting is what he has done since 2013. He has stepped down from the company position. Two reasons. One, he decided to do it. He said, I will stay in this company for 5 to 8 years. He stayed 8 years. The second reason, he is sick. He has a personal, serious illness, I would say. So it's very difficult to stay in a position in this. But he had founded with his wife the Sampark Foundation. This guy is just incredible. With this foundation, he's still the president of this foundation. They are developing education for poor children. Right now, they have touched 7 million children with a very simple, frugal innovation where they have audio tapes. There is no electricity, no internet in the village where they go. You know what they do? They bring electricity through the bicycle. So they give to the professors, to the teachers, this box. They teach the teachers learn how to use the box, and they improve the quality of education in English and math. The grades, I mean, all the tests they do show a sharp increase. His goal is to reach 25 million children. When you see this example, it's just incredible. When you think of a responsible leader, I mean, I organized the last event, because I organized 11 events in France with him since 2011. The last one was on November 30th in Paris. We had a conference with about 350 people, and the people just told me after that, even people from high-level position in a number of companies, they say, we have never seen such a leader. So again, inspiring. So I had met him with some companies. I gave you, so don't keep it for you. It's not registered. Société Générale. I had the executive committee, the top guys they met with this guy. They listened to Vinit Nayar, and they never changed. So that's interesting. A company willing to listen to an inspired, it was 5 years ago, I think. And I had a meeting with the executive committee. And, because if you really want to change, you have to be committed. Okay, that's finished. And I have 6 minutes left. Oof. Oof.
Look at responsible leadership there, but I'm hoping you took a lot of that. I love that model of HR, by the way, how that's kind of the one with HR.
Yeah. I mean, it's not copyrighted. You can steal it. There is no problem.
Legal and all that kind of stuff. So,
but you won't have the guy that means me in front of the chart.
Look, there are some questions on the app, and I didn't even write them this time. So well done, people, for playing. So shall we take this one first?
The first, I don't know.
When did it occur?
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah. No, I can't trace it now. Seriously, I can trace the notion of responsible leadership in let's say about 15 to 20 years, when really the stakeholders theory became an important issue. Okay. So again, it's when companies start to look around. Especially the companies in difficult business.
Sure.
I'm taking an example of this of the world leader. Now I don't know if they are still the world leader. A company called Areva that changed. They were making the nuclear plant. French company worldwide, and they became became very sensitive to stakeholders, because when you are doing nuclear plants, you better be careful with your environment. So they started to have a stakeholders program, and the leaders at the time were very sensitive. So I would say about 15, 20 years, when really companies started to take into account the stakeholders. Yes.
Agree. And I guess the story of Alcoa Steel.
Then you have many companies.
Things,
in difficult, and it's very also difficult to work in a cigarette business, and so on. So you have to take into account your. Okay.
And then the next one is, what are the features of a responsible leader? I think we covered some of them. But
it was at the beginning. To me, a responsible leader. Very simply said, we had this morning a discussion. I think some of the discussion we had this morning really fit with well with a responsible leader. Really, concept, for instance, of humility or servant leadership. I think when you listen and you listen with the people of Vinit Nair company, HCL, I did a case studies on that company because I had a research chair on human capital, and one of the company I've surveyed is obviously HCL. And clearly, when you talk to the people non-selected by the management, they all go towards, so it's kind of, the features are, we can say humility, we can say, broadening the vision, we can say inspiring, and so on. So it's certainly not a traditional leader. That's
your fellow countryman Jean-François Aubrist rings a bell.
Or if you take, for instance, the example of somebody, we have a big problem with the one CEO of Renault. Have you heard of the story? He's in jail in Japan. Typically this guy, he is the contrary example of a responsible leader. And I'm not criticizing his business skills. He has been very good. The problem is not a leader for me. He's just somebody who has been successful in business. But here we have a problem. So they are talking, I heard this morning on French radio, they talk about the guy who is going to leave Michelin. And the guy, if the CEO, the present CEO of Michelin is going to retire because he has basically the same age, we have the same age, he's going to retire. This guy for me is a responsible leader. Because Michelin has developed something called responsibility or accountability in the plants. It's, he really think and does what he's saying. So
there's a trademark there, isn't there? And some of those responsible leaders have let go, haven't they? And people step into lots of self-management and leadership.
Yeah, so again, any question? Yes.
What happens to this Indian company?
HCL?
What happens to the Indian company?
So,
since the CEO...
That's a very good question. He was asked during the conference in November again. So he said, obviously, that most of this management style has remained. But he's no longer he's in the back seat. He's still more or less an advisor.
How's the company doing?
Oh, very well. The good news, if you tell me about, I had some numbers during his leadership. You have seen the number multiplied by 5, 6, and so on. Really, they are really on a curve that is. And that's interesting because the original leader has left, and they were able to continue the model. Even if we talked to several people from HCL and so on, they recognize that obviously the spirit of Vinit is no longer in the company. So that's the problem, how you maintain, you're right, such a leadership style when you leave the company. But we have exactly the same question with number of companies that had a very strong leader and then replaced by no more leaders, and then we have a problem.
I think that's an important one before we come on to that question, which is how much of it is the leader themselves versus the thing they create. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess a responsible leader is one who takes it beyond themselves.
He tried, when he stepped down, in fact, he nominated, and it's not one of his number 2, and the guy had been very long time in the company. It's kind of, basically, he was his really deputy CEO.
Okay, so we'll take the question in the room here.
I have 1 minute.
And then we'll do the agile leadership one there. So here comes the mic.
It was a presentation. It was very dynamic. Who are some very exemplary, responsible leaders in Europe?
Yeah.
Who are such leaders in Europe that you can give us as examples from the business world?
Do I have other examples?
Yeah.
That's a good question. That's a difficult question. To be honest, I know more, obviously, in my own country. I talk about Jean-Dominique Sanard, the head of Michelin. I have also in mind, but that was the case of Danone, so again, we have examples, but I have, you told about Zobrist.
Yeah.
I have a guy in Bordeaux, he's managing 3,000 people, but this guy for me is one of the most responsible leaders I have ever seen, and he has completely changed his business. Basically what he changed from a traditional model of managing top-down, KPIs to a much more empowered company. And it's incredible. And we are talking about company renting trucks, specialized trucks. You rent the trucks and the driver. So we are talking about people on the road with special trucks. So that's an example. So you may find people, I guess, in UK, in Germany, in Switzerland, everywhere, I think. We find a trend, and because don't forget, we are facing now the expectations of new generations, and they are very demanding. Even in HSA, and I forgot to show you, no, I should have, maybe, can I show just the last slide, and I will finish. I forget to, can you, yeah, my last slide, I forget to show you this one. Can you just show? So I didn't sell too much HSA, but you see, since 2003, there have been a number of steps because HSA has launched a special chair on poverty and social responsibility. There was an action tank in 2000. You see, so you have a lot of initiatives in the school that has changed gradually the mindset. And that's very interesting for my case, because as I said at the beginning of my talk, HSA has been known to be a rather an arrogant kind of culture. With this kind of change, we are changing the mindset of the prof, of the staff, and of all the stakeholders. So that, and by the way, Mohamed Yunus, the famous, is part of the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
Great.
It's already done.
We're out of time, so we can show our appreciation to Charles. Thank you.